views on this. 81333, start your message with the word radio. You can give us a call as well. Now, we did ask the Department for Transport for an interview. They declined, but they sent us this statement. They say, since taking office, the Secretary of State has expressed his concerns over smart motorways and has committed £500 million to safety improvement. He's also asked Highways England for a report by the 12th of March setting out progress in delivering those improvements and identifying actions that can be delivered early. In a moment, we'll talk to Edmund King, who's the president of motoring group the AA, and find out what they think. But let's talk now to Claire Mercer, whose husband was killed on a smart motorway and now campaigns against them. Claire, thank you so much for joining us on the programme. Just tell us what happened to your husband. I mean, it was one of those incidents. It should have been a quick exchange of details, and that was the end of it. But a devastating end to this story. Tell us what happened.
They'd had a minor bump, so they pulled over where they could. They'd had the bump at a sign that said no hard shoulder for 4 miles. They couldn't see the nearest refuge area because it was a mile out of sight. 18 months ago, we knew far less about smart motorways than we do now. So I think they didn't know that they were on a smart motorway and what to do. So, they knew they had to pull over, so they both pulled over as far as they could to the left, but the crash barrier stopped them getting right out of the live lane. Over the crash barrier was a 30-foot drop onto a slip road below, so they couldn't go over the barrier. They were exchanging details, and a lorry ploughed into them and killed them instantly.
Just devastating. And, as you say, you point out, a lot of people probably wouldn't still know. We know more about smart motorways now, but I think a lot of people, when you're in that situation, wouldn't quite know what to do or where to go to pull over.
No, exactly. And, in Jason and Alexandra's case, their vehicles were capable of moving. They just didn't know what to do. And the coroner and the judge and, a few other people have said it was an unwise decision to stop, but it was an understandable one. They'd just had a bump at 60, 70 miles an hour. They didn't know what was going on. They discovered they didn't know the road they were on. And all this technology, the other thing is all this technology that we're told is there, didn't pick them up when they originally stopped, and it didn't pick them up when they were dead on the road, causing the whole motorway to be stopped, and cause an utter scene of carnage. So even then the technology didn't pick them up. The road was only closed after had been dead for over 5 minutes, and members of the public started ringing in and saying close the motorway.
And, 2 people killed instantly, and then 2 families getting that horrific news. And the grief of losing someone so suddenly is always horrific. But when it's happened in these circumstances, when you can sort of think, well, this didn't need to happen. How have you coped with that?
Medication is one of the ways, I have to say. Apparently I had PTSD. I couldn't stop shaking. And I'd been shaking for several weeks when they realised that this wasn't something that was just going to wear off. So they put me on medication, but warned me that it was going to take 4 weeks at least to kick in. And it did. So I was shaking for 6 weeks in total. And that's just a physical effect. Mentally, I couldn't function for a couple of weeks. I didn't know what a smart motorway was. I'd never heard the term, and it took 2 weeks to realise that this wasn't just a tragic accident, that I kept hearing this term around me, smart motorway, and people saying it's one of them smart motorways. This shouldn't have happened. And then I had to look them up and find out what a smart motorway was.
And the coroner actually said, the lack of hard shoulder contributed to your husband's and the other man's death, and also commented that smart motorways present an ongoing risk of future deaths. And of course, what it's like to be the person that gets the news that their loved one has died. And I suppose now your focus is on making sure nobody else gets that call.
Exactly. I mean, it shouldn't have happened. It didn't need to happen, and it's completely negated as well now because they did it. The highways Highways England removed the lane to increase capacity. So they increased capacity. Jason and Alexandra were killed. Then they discovered that pollution was so high, they've had to limit the speeds in that area now. So capacity is reduced again. So the only thing they've achieved is killing 2 people in that exact spot. So it's just utter madness, and it needs stopping, and that's why we're campaigning.
You must live with so many different emotions, sort of the grief of losing your husband, the you know the anger as well,
Mm-hmm.
and is life must be really difficult.
It is. It's incredibly difficult. I mean, Jason was such a big, gregarious, colourful, distinctive-looking person that and he was noisy. I realise how noisy he was now because my house is so quiet. And I've never lived on my own. I've never even spent a night on my own before, and now I live on my own. It's a massive change. But I've quit my job to focus on the campaign, and I'm fortunate to be in that position. And it is deflection. I am deflecting. I'm not dealing with my grief properly, but the good thing is a strong campaign is coming out of that, and we're really gathering pace now.
And you must talk to so many people, and we talked about the fact that there have been other deaths, and I would imagine as part of this campaign, you've heard those stories as well, and talked to a lot of people who have similar experiences to you.
Yes. We've got what I call the Broken Hearts Club. It's a group of us that have all lost someone. And, we support each other and we've got to know each other. And, those of us are close enough, we meet up, and it's great support. But there is a lot of different stories. You read out a tweet from a wheelchair user. That is one area of the legal action that we're going to bring. We're going to bring disability discrimination, because if able-bodied people are, in mortal danger, somebody with mobility issues just doesn't stand a chance. So that's one area that we're going to be bringing, as well as a lot of other legal action, the judicial review, corporate manslaughter charges, civil claims, class actions, just anything. We're just going to keep hitting them with everything that we can until they stop.
Just had a text in from Jill in Burgess Hill. She says, I hate smart motorways. I avoid them like the pandemic. I'll drive 10 miles out of my way to avoid them. And she says we need to get a petition to get them put back to original motorways. And I would imagine a lot of people that may not have had the devastating impact that you've had, but actually, do feel anxious and nervous knowing that they don't have that opportunity to potentially pull aside.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we must get 20 messages a week to our Facebook, our Twitter, and our website pages, all called Smart Motorways Kill, telling us that people go massively out of their way to avoid smart motorways. So they're not improving congestion; they're filling up the A roads. But on the petition point, unfortunately, petitions they're just not worth the effort. We did try at first, but they wouldn't even take our petition. The YouGov site wouldn't take our petition. But then we realised that the only thing they offer is to get the subject discussed in Parliament. Well, it gets discussed in Parliament 5 times a year, and they just then move on to the next subject that they're obliged to discuss.
All I'm getting in at the moment is text agreeing with you, I have to say. Mick in Wadhurst has just texted saying, what planet or what drugs are highways people on? I do a lot of motorway driving. These are bloody dangerous. I ride a motorcycle. If you get a puncture on one, you're stuffed. Smart motorway equals death, says Mick in Wadhurst. Now, what the Secretary of State has said, they've expressed concerns over smart motorways. They've committed £500 million to safety improvements. Also asked Highways England for a report by the 12th of March setting out progress in delivering those improvements and identifying actions that can be delivered early. Is that good enough? Is that going far enough, do you think?
No, because already in his comment, he's just talking about adapting what's there, and he never considers scrapping them completely, because with all the gadgetry and all the technology, even if the tech did work, and even if the camera operators were watching, which we've now had confessed under oath that the camera operators are doing so many other tasks, they're only occasionally looking at the screen, and the technology doesn't work. Even if it did, how would the cameras and tech get an ambulance through 4 lanes of stood traffic? Even if we were perfect, we had no mobility issues, how do the emergency services get through?
Hearing what happened to your husband and the other man is absolutely devastating. You know, nobody would want to be in the situation that you'd been in. But from what you're saying, you think that if this situation carries on, somebody else could potentially die in that way. Another family will get that call to say that they've lost a loved one.
Yes, I mean, it has happened since Jason and Alexandru died. It's happened, at least 14, 15 times that I know of. And that's just deaths. What about serious injuries and any injuries? In the last month, over the whole of the UK, the England network, there's been five or six serious instances in just the last month. So it's just continuing to happen.
Claire, thank you so much for joining us on the programme. I'm so sorry to hear what happened to your husband, and very grateful to you for sharing your story. Lots of reaction coming into this. I don't think anyone's got in touch to say they like smart motorways. So we've got another one here. This comes from John saying, "Morning, Sarah. It's blindingly obvious. If you remove safe refuges, i.e. hard shoulders, then deaths will happen. Another case of the experts just ploughing on with their beliefs and not accepting the obvious."